So I just got back from the most prestigious film festival in the world, the Cannes Film Festival, where each year filmmakers, cinephiles and a bunch of YouTubers from around the world gather to celebrate the art of cinema and to be the first to experience the works that will reshape its direction in the months or perhaps even in the years to come. It's the place that premiered movies such as Parasite, The Tree of Life, Pulp Fiction, Apocalypse Now and many other works that have come to define cinema as we know it today. That's really the most exciting part of this festival. It's that idea of going into a film that you know next to nothing about, that has no trailer, no reviews, no images, and sometimes not even like a single familiar name attached to its production. And to have that then be an experience that will go on to inspire a new generation of filmmakers to just change people's lives and become this monumental cinematic event. This is what I came for. I didn't just want to see some good movies, I wanted to see those that really took me someplace new, that challenged my perception of what cinema can be. You know, I wanted to be awestruck. And so in this video I'm not going to review all of the 22 or so movies that I saw at the festival. Rather, I want to discuss a few of them that really struck a chord with me. Those that I couldn't stop thinking about even as I was already seeing something else. And the first one that did that was actually the very first movie that I saw, which was a German movie called Sound of Falling.
Wenn ich versuche, mich an diesen einen Sommer zu erinnern, dann frage ich mich immer, was Nelly wohl zuletzt gesehen hat. Und ob mir irgendetwas hätte auffallen müssen.
To best explain what this movie is, or what it felt like to me, there is a scene in Terrence Malick's The Thin Red Line in which a soldier wonders if all of humanity is just one big soul, with each individual being but a different face of the same person.
Maybe all men got one big soul, everybody's a part of, each like a coal, drawn from the fire.
It definitely feels like Sound of Falling took a note from this idea and added its own tragic spin to it. Through its multi-generational drama, mainly taking place in one house that evolves and transforms over time, we follow the lives of multiple women who, each in their own way, struggle with their own existence. Their shared suffering hints at a greater cosmic connection transcending time and space and individuality. But if there really is one big soul, then it is, as Sound of Falling seems to suggest, tragically fragmented into disparate points of consciousness that cannot directly experience this greater unity beyond their limited selves. At best, they can only sense it through the phantom pain of its absence. But then again, maybe that's just death. Perhaps the void we occasionally feel is just the non-being that is bound to intrude into our thoughts at some point, especially when being yields such uncertainty, frustration and pain and sorrow.
Eigentlich kann man dann ja einfach beschließen, dass das, was schlecht ist, in echt gut ist.
More than anything though, it is the form through which this conflict is presented that is the real source of the movie's emotional power. Sound of Falling is disorienting like David Lynch, pastorally tactile like Bela Tarr, and deeply poetic like Andrei Tarkovsky. As such, it is a challenging first encounter, occasionally slow and meandering, but it is also an undeniably beautiful and haunting one that dares to ask its audience for attention and vulnerability, and perhaps even more boldly, for a second viewing. Indeed, it does really feel like one of those movies that only gets better on a rewatch, which I'll soon be able to do as Sound of Falling has been acquired by none other than Mubi. Mubi has really been on a roll this year, and I'm not just saying that because they invited me to a cool party, but also because they acquired another movie that I'd recommend keeping an eye on.
Wanna get married?
Die My Love, starring Jennifer Lawrence and Robert Pattinson, is about a woman who moves to the countryside with her partner, has a baby, and then starts to lose her entire sense of self. This movie was an absolute blast for the first hour or so. Mostly taking place in one location, it's just such a visceral descent into madness that really puts you in the center of the chaos. And while Robert Pattinson is really good in his supporting role, Jennifer Lawrence definitely steals the show with one of her best performances to date, treading a fine line between dark comedy and genuine tragedy that I don't think anyone else could have pulled off quite like she did. The movie does get a bit more challenging towards the end as the deeper darkness of her depression and loss of self really kicks in, and I wasn't sure how I felt about it at first because, without spoiling too much, it seems to invoke a rather cynical perspective. But I went to the press conference afterwards where they did offer a more hopeful interpretation of the rather ambiguous ending, which I really liked and which has me curious to watch the movie again. There were actually quite a number of movies in which a house became not just the central stage, but also, as cliched as it might sound, a central character within the story. Almost explicitly so in Sentimental Value, the long-awaited follow-up from Joachim Trier, who previously directed The Worst Person in the World, which is an absolute favorite of mine. Whereas The Worst Person in the World was mainly about one woman, Sentimental Value expands its canvas to an entire family, and it was absolutely mesmerizing. It's one of those movies that feels almost literary in the sense that all of its characters feel so three-dimensional and complex and lived in. And this is also the greatest strength of its narrative. If I had to capture it in one sentence, I'd say Sentimental Values is about communication between family members, exploring both the potential means by which we can reach out to each other and form connections, as well as the limitations and obstacles that might get in the way of doing so. I'd want to see this again to be sure, but I think I might like this one better than The Worst Person in the World. So that's definitely saying something. I just feel like Trier preserved the best elements from that movie, which for me was mainly that beautiful mosaic of different filmmaking techniques, but then built on them with a much more layered and expansive narrative to create what might just be a future classic. And one that movie also got the partial rights to. I told you they were really on a roll this year. So, a couple of days into the festival, I kind of randomly grabbed a ticket for the premiere of Splitsville, which I knew absolutely nothing about. I walked into the theater and was pleasantly surprised by the whole cast and crew being there. But then Ari Aster also came in, as did Sean Baker and Jason Momoa and a whole bunch of other big celebrities, and that's when I realized I was probably in for something special. And indeed, while this wasn't necessarily my favorite movie of the festival, it was definitely my favorite theater experience. Splitsville is basically a comedy about relationships and friendships, and perhaps the best thing I could say about it is that it's the kind of comedy movie that made me realize just how much I'd been missing this genre. I honestly can't even remember the last movie that was this consistently funny while also telling an actual story and displaying some actual filmmaking skills. The whole audience was just completely electrified by the end, and I loved the way the director stood up and talked about the importance of laughing together.
We need to keep making cinematic comedies for Cannes, plain and simple. That's my goal.
Which for me at least, after a few days of seeing mostly heavier dramas, was just what I needed. So yeah, definitely pay attention to this one, because even without the buzzing theater experience, I think this really is one of the better comedies of the last decade or so.
New York Herald Tribune!
Another movie that offered a more joyful and upbeat experience was Richard Linklater's Nouvelle, which is about the making of Jean-Luc Godard's Breathless, an essential work within the French New Wave.
Une cascade.
Now, while I can understand some of the early reactions here about the whole thing feeling like one big cosplaying exercise, it's entirely filmed in French and in the 1950s cinematic style, I really appreciated what Linklater said about it in the press conference, which is that he wasn't trying to recapture the revolutionary brilliance of Godard. Rather, he wanted to tell the story as if it was being captured in the actual moment. That is, without that benefit of hindsight that can so often make historical movies feel more sentimental and self-important. Instead, it's basically just a hangout movie. It's just about some guy who wants to make a movie in his own vision and goes for it. And as such, I really did enjoy this. I do think you will appreciate this one more if you know a little bit about the French New Wave beforehand, and if you've already seen Godard's Breathless, because the movie doesn't really give you a lot of context beyond just letting you experience the vibe and atmosphere of that specific time and place.
Ce type me filme avec une caméra dans un triporteur de la Poste, et je dis tout ce qui me passe par la tête parce que tous les dialogues seront doublés plus tard.
Before we continue with what might just be my personal favorite movie of the festival, I do have some more honorable mentions. Perhaps most notably, there were 3 movies from actors who premiered their directorial debuts. The first was Eleanor the Great by Scarlett Johansson, which I unfortunately missed, but I did hear good things about it. The other 2 I did get to see, and they were both really good actually. The first one is The Chronology of Water by Kristen Stewart, which spans many years of a woman's life and details her aspirations towards love, happiness, and artistic expression, while also struggling with abuse, addiction, and trauma. It might sound a bit heavy-handed, and while it is true that this movie is by no means an easy watch, the way it is told is nevertheless remarkably beautiful. It's hard to describe exactly what Stewart is doing here, but it vaguely reminded me of Upstream Color. It's just very fragmented and meandering, but in a good way. In such a way that, as the title somewhat suggests, the movie really finds its own chronology in the flow of human consciousness. The last directorial debut from an established actor was Urchin, directed by Harris Dickinson.
I was actually just looking for some work. I don't know if you've got any going at the moment. I'm pretty flexible with hours.
This one is about a homeless man who struggles to escape his self-destructive cycle. Dickinson seems quite inspired by the Safdie brothers here, though he definitely also adds a lot of his own voice to it, and in particular, a great amount of warmth. This is also largely thanks to a wonderful performance from the main actor Frank Delane, who shines as the main character Mike and perfectly balances the complex nuances between bad choices and bad circumstances.
Did everyone else got lunch? Has everyone else got lunch? I didn't bring lunch.
Lastly, there's one more movie I want to mention, despite not being entirely sure if I would actually recommend it, and that is Resurrection. This really was the Wildcard movie of the festival. Basically, it's an almost 3-hour love letter to the last 100 years of cinema, but it's presented as a total Lynchian fever dream. I honestly had no idea what was going on, even considered walking out a few times, and yet there was something weirdly intriguing about it that kept me in my seat, and that did eventually culminate into a strange emotional reaction at the end of it. I can't really articulate much more about it beyond that. Again, this is a wild card. I highly doubt it's going to reach a wide audience, but I can definitely imagine this one developing a strong cult following. The only thing I will say is that if you do end up going for this one, be sure to commit and just ride it out until the end. Okay, so the last movie I want to talk about was an absolute audience favorite at the festival, and it might just be my favorite one as well, though I also believe Sentimental Value might be a genuine masterpiece. But anyways, let's talk about Sirát. The Sirát, as the opening text explains, is the bridge between life and heaven that spans the chasms of hell. It's a bridge that is as thin as a hair and as sharp as a sword. And here we immediately get the most important key that I think unlocks this entire story. For while it is ostensibly about a father who, together with his son, searches for his missing daughter within the techno rave scene in the North African desert, and then teams up with a band of ravers on their way to the next party, as the story unfolds, it slowly becomes clear that the treacherous land they've ventured into is not just defined by material dangers, but more so by cosmic ones. In other words, the desert here is more like a mythological realm, and the true story taking place within it is not one of the body, but rather one of the soul. As rapturous desert landscapes encapsulate our travelers and pulsing techno beats drive them deeper into the unknown, Sirát takes on an otherworldly quality that is quite unlike anything I've ever experienced. And experienced is a very deliberate choice of words here, because this is really one of those movies that feels like it's just operating on an entirely different level. Reducing it to its plot is surely going to leave you disappointed, especially considering how it takes some hard left turns that not everyone's going to be on board with. At the same time, however, the idea of a tone poem or something that just lets you enjoy the vibes doesn't quite capture what this movie does either. Instead, Sirát seems to want to engage its audience on a deeper poetic level, which I feel is often misinterpreted as a vibe movie, but which in reality is more structured than that. It's just that the structure defies an all-encapsulating analysis. It's like the way an explanation of a great poem never fully captures the complete revelation that comes from reading it. And so too it works for Sirát. I didn't fully get everything about it at first and felt conflicted about some parts, but the fact that I haven't been able to let go of it even after having seen plenty of other movies at the Cannes Film Festival does signify that it stirred something within me on that more foundational level. But the main question is, what exactly? Well, in Islamic theology, insofar as I understand it after a quick Wikipedia scan, the Sirát is a bridge that can be crossed only by the most religiously righteous, which in the context of the movie puzzled me as I had a hard time connecting the fates of the individual characters to specific moral acts. In fact, most of the things that happen or do not happen to them seem to be largely defined by random chance, by good or bad fortune. But upon further reflection, I began to feel like this may have been exactly the point. Each traveler, after all, is a foreigner in a strange land. They walk the narrow path but do not understand the rules, which can be seen as a more specific comment on outsiders invading spaces where they shouldn't be. But from another perspective, and this is my preferred way of seeing it, it also reflects a more universal statement about religion and human existence in general, about how we struggle to find some kind of wholeness and connection, some semblance of meaning and resolution within a mysterious cosmos in which it feels like even the tiniest misstep can throw us off and cast us down into the depths of hell. I'd have to do a full analysis of this one at some point, but for now all I know is that this is the only movie at the Cannes Film Festival that truly gave me those transcendental moments of pure cinematic ecstasy, that truly had me levitating from my seat, and that was exactly what I came for. To tell you the truth, I was originally planning to release this video without a sponsor, but considering how many great movies were acquired by Mubi, I asked them really last minute if they wanted to be on this one, and they did, which is why I'm once again happy to be able to offer you an extended free trial at mubi.com/likestoriesofold. Aside from the titles that I've already talked about, Mubi also premiered 2 new movies that I feel got somewhat overlooked, mainly because they were both very understated. You see, the thing you have to understand about a film festival like this, where people watch 3 to 5 movies a day, is that they tend to gravitate towards those that are the most groundbreaking, the most daring and ambitious. That really makes a big impression, and, rightfully so. But it's because of this that some movies that are simply good in a traditional sense can get lost in the shuffle. One such movie is The History of Sound, starring Paul Mescal and Josh O'Connor. This was a really tender love story, and more than that, it's a heartbreaking tale about how the choices we make can lock us into a certain path that creates an ever-growing negative space, and that will someday come to haunt us as the life we didn't live, the choices we didn't make, and the people we failed to connect to. I know this sounds rather tragic, and to some extent it is, but the history of sound manages quite beautifully to add a life-affirming spin to all of this. One that ultimately draws you away from the life that never was to instead make you appreciate the one that is. The other movie premiere that I really liked was The Mastermind, another movie with Josh O'Connor. If you've seen a Kelly Reichardt movie before, you know she tends to make these almost anti-drama movies, and The Mastermind is no exception. Basically, it's a story about an art thief who goes on the run after a museum heist doesn't go exactly as planned. At first it felt like a more mellow Ocean's 11, but as the story progressed and it became clear to me that this wasn't going to be a very plot-driven movie, I actually came to see something more disquieting in it instead. That being a story about the banal ways in which men will ruin their entire lives while believing they're about to have their big break. Again, it is a very understated, but nevertheless poignant tale that I think is surprisingly relevant in this day and age. Somehow it made me think of all those people who put their life savings into a crypto meme coin or something in the hopes of getting rich overnight, only to see it all evaporate and be left only with the broken dreams. So yeah, all in all, a great haul for Mubi at the Cannes Film Festival this year, which just goes on top of an already amazing library of carefully selected films that offer you the best that cinema has to offer. Be sure to claim that extended free trial by using my personal link, that's mubi.com/likestoriesofold, to get 30 days of great cinema for free.